Okay, I think that next is to put this gear on. So it's got the needle bearing, this gear, so we're gonna put the needle bearing on first. Slides okay. Gonna put this gear over it. And obviously you have to key it with this gear. And then this gear goes on top. Here's the top side, here's the bottom side. It's really obvious. And like I said before, this is where the selector goes onto, and this is basically, instead of a brass synchronizer, it's an all steel synchronizer. So it still looks basically brand new. And then I'll check, I think these grooves actually line up with the groove on the bottom. See, there's 4 grooves for the oil. So I think it might line up with these grooves here. So I'm gonna, actually it looks like slightly off. It might not line exactly, actually. I'll double check it. Alright, so it looks like you can line it exactly up. So here's the groove, here's the groove. Just pull it up all the way here and spin it, and then realign it. And that's how you can match it up. I'm not sure if it matters or if that's even the best way. Maybe turning it a few degrees so it's in the middle is better. I don't know. Okay, so I watched the footage again, and it looks like here's the oil channel. It's just like 1 tooth off from the bottom. So I'm gonna offset it that way. I don't know if it makes a difference or it was just like random how they put it in. But the next part is gonna be the selector. So this goes in, that tube goes into the hole, I think. So this is gonna fit over that, and this is gonna fit over that servo, the valve for the servo body. And also, don't forget, step goes up. The little groove cut out faces up. Alright, so I've actually checked the footage because the repair manual doesn't really explain this that well. It says the chamfered end, like the part that has the bevel, that's the side that you put your bolt in. But the problem is that both sides of this is chamfered. So how do you know? Well, the bolt only has threads on the end and the front is smooth. So you want the side that doesn't have the thread, you want that to be the side pointed. And why this is extremely important is because you see the cutout there on the servo shaft. That cutout needs to face this way. So if you flip this over, now the cutout is this side. See the cutout right there? This servo valve is, it has to lock in a certain way. So this is the wrong side. See how the threads are closer to the end? That's wrong. So it needs to be this way. So threads are now away from the hole. This is the side that needs to face the bolt. And it needs to face this way. Okay, so the selector goes back on here with the chamfered side, the stepped side facing up. Put the bolt back in. Obviously, like I explained, the smooth hole on this side and the threaded part is more towards the opposite side of the bolt. And the reverse servo body's got the cutout I already showed it, but it's the cutout's facing this way. So it's extremely important, this step. Torque this to 8.7 foot-pounds, which is 104.4 inch-pounds. And then you can use a flathead and bend this tab in. It just holds this bolt in from vibrating off. Alright, so I used a punch to punch in these fins and a little bit on the top too. And I just used my rubber hammer. Next thing is to put this gear on. And you can see that, okay, there's a needle bearing in here. That's what that side looks like. That's what that side looks like. And I believe it goes on like this, because these are the teeth for the synchronizer. And so what's extremely important is check these teeth right here, make sure they're not rounded off, because then the transmission won't be able to go in reverse easily. So just double check that these teeth inside here, make sure that they're not rounded off. And these actually look really good, so I'm gonna keep these. And so once again, this is the bottom side. I just have it like this because otherwise they'd fall apart really easy. So it's gonna go on top right of here. And it's splined. That's why I knew it didn't go in there. So I've got the gear on. The bottom spins. It's basically flush with this gear. This gear is slightly down a little bit more. And then you're going to want to test, because you see how this spins. Pull this thing up. So now you see that these two gears are now locked. And so that synchronizer, what I was telling you about, the steel synchronizer, is lock these gears in. And so I believe that's how the transmission goes into reverse. Because I think that's called the reverse, the selector, or I don't know. Anyways, that's how it works. I noticed that this one should be bent in a little bit more this way, and this thing should be bent out a little bit more, but it still works. So there's actually cutouts in there. It's like cutout and then another cutout on both sides of this thing. So I think that's how it locks down. So I took this apart because I wanted to double check that there's actually 4 O-rings, because I went through the video and I wasn't 100% sure. So there's 1, 2, 3, and the 4th one that was hard to see is this one down here. But it's there, so everything's okay. I'm just gonna go ahead and put back the clutch pack and the gear. Okay, this should be the completed transmission. All I need to do now is put the transmission housing on it. And the last important thing to check is all the feed pipes. So the longest one I believe is right here, which goes right into the servo body right there. I believe it's 220 millimeters, and it goes right through the selector arm. The next one is going to be this, which is I think the top accumulator. So there's two short ones that are even, 2 long ones that are even. Regulator. The regulator has 3 pipes here, And even though this one seems shorter, I believe it's because this is lower. So actually these two are even height, and this one's slightly taller, but they're actually all the same length. It's only because this is raised up a little bit. And I used the piping cutter to make a slight cut around them to seal them. Now they're really hard to get off. I'm actually worried that they're a little bit too tight, and I barely had to cut them. So you gotta be really take your time and don't cut too deep with the pipe cutter. But that should minimize pressure loss because it's leaking out of the pipes. Because I believe these all shoot into the main housing, the transmission housing. So you want these to be not airtight, but I guess oil tight. Okay, this one right here, after the 3 pipes, this one right here I think is probably the second longest one. I think it's probably like 198 millimeters. And then the weirdest one, the strangest one is this one, because all the rest are 8 millimeters, I believe, in diameter. I'm not sure if it's the inner or probably the outer diameter, but this one's 10 millimeters. This one's not like any of the rest of them, and this is the accumulator body, and it's 60 millimeters in length. So this should be the completed transmission, and you just have to put everything else back together. Okay, here's the gasket for the transmission housing, and the other side is a different color. Thing is, you can't mess this up because it's only going to fit on here one way. So it's going to be the white side facing up. And I've been researching it, and I'm going to put oil. I'm going to rub oil all the way around here on this side and on the transmission housing, so both sides of this. And I've heard people do that, and it's not a problem. The reason I want to do it is because if this ever has to come off, it will come off a lot easier, because this thing basically welds itself on here after a long time, and you have to cut off with a razor blade, and that's a huge hassle. So I'm going to put ATF, and I'm just going to put it all the way around here, and I'll probably take this out and put it around these dowel pins so that they don't rust. Okay, we're gonna put the case back on, and before we do that, we have to put the reverse idler gear back on. So inside here, that part right there, this the first thing that you have to do is put this washer on, and it goes down like this. So the smooth side is facing up. Then the gear with this this pointed part, it goes up. So this goes on top of here, and we're gonna slide it down just like before. So it's gonna slide down here. Then we're gonna put the case on and slide the gear back on. And then on top of this is gonna be well, 2 needle bearings go inside here, and then this flat washer, and then this. Okay, before I put the transmission case on, I actually use masking tape to tape that gear, because you have to push it down in order to clear the gear that it has to slide around. It's not showing up on the video, but there is a gear right above it, and you have to slide that gear down. So I use masking tape to tape it down so it wouldn't just fall into the case when I put the case on. You can use a rubber band if you want to, whatever's easier. Just make sure that the masking tape doesn't get stuck inside there, because there's no way to get it out other than taking the case back off. And it's kind of hard getting this case on because this thing, it didn't line up perfectly with that hole, so you have to put the case on. It's gonna jam on top of here, and then I had to use a pick to push it this way a little bit, and then you have to kind of wiggle this or wiggle the case around this to make it go down. And really important is, you see the pin right here, you'll have to manually put it into neutral. So basically you're just gonna twist the little jagged thing, you're gonna twist it like it's gotta be, you gotta twist it this way so it's at the end of the little tooth on this side. You'll know because this is gonna go through its hole. Wait, let's see. Yeah, it's gonna go through its hole. Otherwise it's just gonna jam up and it's not gonna work. So this, and then there's a bunch of tubes here. You see that they need to also line up. These should line up. I mean, if it doesn't, you're basically screwed, because you might have to buy new pipes for this. There's another one down there somewhere, and then here's one right here, and then there's like 6 of them or something like that. And so you just gotta hope that these weren't bent, so they should go through these 3. And this one didn't line up perfectly, which I mean, this thing's the longest one, so even a slight bit of misalignment's gonna really not line this up. So this is the only one that I had problems with. Okay, this bracket here, I don't think it's important to have it perfectly this way, because I mean it stops anyways. But this bracket goes here right above this thing for one of the solenoids. This right here, this bracket, this is the hanger, so you can hang a hook to pull out the transmission. This goes here, there's a bolt there. So that one's obvious. There's another hanger, which is this one. This one's gonna go right here, because you see how it's stepped, so it's gonna go right into these 2 bolts here. That's another hanger to pull the transmission. And the rest, basically, how to tell is when you put the bolt in, if it just spins, it means it's not grabbing onto threads. And I put anti-seize on all of these, because I remember that some of these were really rusted, especially I think this bolt right here. That's why it looks brand new. And some of these bolts, they seem to round it off, so that's why I replaced some of them. Yeah, basically what I did is I used a caliper, and it spits out a tube here, so I just stuck that tube in here. And it was like basically like one of the bolts, like let's say this one, I'm not sure if this is the one that I was doing, but like just pretend that I measured 160 millimeters down, and you don't want to go all the way to the floor, because actually the ends of the thread go right here. You have to put your finger and feel it. Let's say it went 160 millimeters. Well, the bolt was 140 millimeters, so you have about 20 millimeters of empty threads. So you know that that's the right bolt. It should be obvious, because like for example, this bolt right here, I put the bolt in and it just spun. It wouldn't grab anything, so I knew it was the wrong length of bolt. And so you're just gonna have to double check that by either measuring it or just try it. The diagram and the repair manual will show you some of them. Like for example, I forgot which one, but one of the hangers has like one that's shorter, a shorter bolt than the other one. It's probably this one. And so you just have to you basically just have to test them out. Right, so this thing, we're gonna put it into its gear. Just make sure you don't drop the gear into the case, otherwise you're gonna have to take this whole thing off. So I'm gonna put the shaft in. I'm gonna try to wiggle these needle bearings in, and then this is the flat washer, and you can see that it's got a hole on both sides for oil lubrication. But I don't know if there's a side that has to be on, maybe one side smoother. I should be able to tell just by looking at which side's worn, because the old one, these are new, but the old ones would have made a track into here as it spun. So yeah, and the little dimple, because the shaft goes shorter and then there's a little dimple, that dimple faces up, I'm pretty sure. So I put the shafts back in. I try to center the gear. The washer below, I showed that already, but the little nubs, they point down, not up, because the gear has to spin on around there. So the nub goes down. I think it's to help lock it, so that the washer doesn't also spin. But I see that there's scoring marks, so it looks like it spins anyways, not on purpose. But anyways, I'm gonna put this one needle bearing in, and then the second one. Okay, and then the washer. It looks like this side's kind of worn, probably because the old needle bearings spun around this. So I'm gonna flip it to the less used side. That way I get twice as much life from the same washer. And then this is gonna go on it. And you see that the nub faces up. So I'm gonna put this on it. And looks like, you see it can't line up this way, it must be the opposite way. Yeah, this is the only way that's gonna fit. Okay, these bolts, I believe are 12 millimeters. The repair manual says these are 20 pound-feet. I don't know why it's backwards, but that's it. It's LBF and then feet. It's gotta be the same thing as foot-pounds. So 20 foot-pounds, and the transmission housing bolts are 33 foot-pounds. Or pound-feet, whatever the difference is. Okay, so 20 pound-foot-feet. I'm not sure why the manual states it like that. LBF, and then FT. That's what it says. So this is a 3/8 ratchet. That actually already seems good. That already seems good. I'm gonna double check it again. Make sure that this thing's just not gonna strip it. Because that's the one thing about using torque wrenches. You gotta also use common sense and not be stupid about it. Okay, so I try to use the smaller one, but 20 foot-pounds is 240 inch-pounds, and this thing only goes up to 200. That's a 1/4 inch drive. I actually went ahead and tried this again, and I was just almost there. So that tells me that my intuition, just by feel, I'm pretty close to what a torque wrench is. Because you can see it clicks, and I didn't show it on camera, but I just went a tiny bit more and it started clicking, and this one actually already started clicking. So just by guess, I'm pretty close to it. and then these are going to be 33. Well, went around and did all the 14mm case bolts, and what I did first is I tried to do like a kind of like a semi star pattern, because that's how lug nuts are done. So I just like, I didn't do it perfectly. I just went like here, then here, or no, I think it was like here, 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 and just randomly. And then it's hard to keep track of which ones you're doing. So after you do your crazy star type pattern, go around sequentially and do every one of them. And make sure that the torque wrench clicks. Make sure it clicks on every one of them so you don't miss it. And then, yeah, that's basically... also, when I was putting the case down, I think one part of... because one of them had a pin guide, or a dowel pin, because there's 3 dowel pins on the main case. And so one of them was kind of pushing down, kind of wedging against the gasket. So I took my pick and I pushed it out. So just make sure that it's not binding and trying to rip the gasket. And I also put oil on the bottom part, which is the torque converter housing. So I put ATF oil on there, and then I put the gasket down, and then on top of the gasket I put a layer of ATF oil. I just use my finger, make sure that there's nothing, like no dirt or anything on it, and then I put the case down. There's 2 speed sensors. They look exactly the same. Actually the part number is exactly the same, but just to keep everything nice, I think this is the one that went on top. So try to reuse the same one for the same location. So the first location, I'm pretty sure it's got to be this one. Let's see. It's a 10mm head probably, but the body is 6mm in diameter. The length should be 18mm for this one at least. And obviously, buy a new O-ring and replace it. And then the second location, I'm pretty sure it's this one right here. So, like I said, I believe this one came out of the top. So, and since it's a 10mm head, I'm guessing foot-pounds should be 8.7 foot-pounds. You'll want to double check that, because I'm not 100% sure, but I mean, one bolt should be all the same foot-pounds. So 12mm should be 20, 14s should be 33, 10s should be 8.7, which is 104.4 inch-pounds. Mention, don't forget to lubricate the O-ring all the way around this thing, and then don't forget to lubricate the hole that it goes into. So get ATF oil, put it around there, and for this one at least, I'm also gonna lubricate around here to prevent some rust happening there. So once they're all lubricated, then put it in with the orientation for the bolt, and take the bolt out first obviously, and then bolt it in. And I did double check, it is 8.7 foot-pounds, which is 104.4 inch-pounds. I was actually wrong. This is for the oil temperature sensor, which is this one. You can see mine is damaged here, but since the O-ring is doing the sealing, I think it's still okay. I could try to put some RTV there, but it might not even matter. Basically, so the oil temperature sensor goes here, and the other speed sensor actually goes onto the end cover. There's a hole in the end cover that you stick it into. Okay, we're gonna put this part back on. So basically put the spring on, and you can see that It goes on this side of the pin. And then you can see this right here. See, this side doesn't have the threads until the middle part. So this is a chamfered end. And the opposite side, you can see that the threads go all the way through. So that means that what you're gonna do is basically goes in like this. Oops. So it's gonna go in like this. So and then your bolt and your keeper or your stay, whatever it's called, it's going to go this side. And so your threads, you see that there's no threads on the beginning where the bolt is. So this is going to be where the threaded side is. So the chamfered side that doesn't have threads at the first part, it goes into there, and then these threads should catch the other side where it's fully threaded.